You die, I die, right?
Some games are hyped to the extreme and released to critical failure. Others aren't hyped enough and go on to sell poorly despite getting rave reviews from many critics. The game I'm going to talk about in this video definitely falls into the latter category. Enslaved Odyssey to the West failed in the eyes of the publisher, and maybe it's their own fault. Maybe not. Looking at the unique art style for the time and the talent of the cast, it's easy to see that this game had the chops to sell big. You can see that this game did not deserve to fail. But before we get started, I've hidden this somewhere in the video. If you're the first person to tell me in the comments when and where you see it, I'll pin you and then put you into the next video. But now, what is Enslaved? Originally, it was pitched as a CGI movie, and I'm so glad that they went the route of a video game, because it's one of those ideas which sounds like it would be a good movie, but it just works so much better as a video game, purely because you could have it longer and you can cram more stuff into it. But it was developed by Ninja Theory, who you may know are the developers behind Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice and the upcoming Hellblade 2: Senua's Saga. And it was published by Namco Bandai Games, who then went on to become Bandai Namco. Hang on, we've been through this before. And was released for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 in October 2010. It's a loose adaptation of the Chinese novel Journey to the West. Now, Journey to the West follows the travels of a Buddhist monk named Tan Sanzang as he travels to the western regions, which is Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent. He's trotting away along there trying to look for the Buddhist sacred texts, and he's joined by 3 disciples, one of which is named Sun Wukong, who also known as the Monkey King. Wukong may sound familiar to you because just recently there was a game announced called Black Myth: Wukong. This is based on the same novel. Much more of a closer adaptation than what Enslaved is. Enslaved is just loosely based, but that may be where you may have heard Wukong before, or there's plenty of shows on Netflix which feature the Monkey King. It's a very popular source material to be adapted by Western people. It is set 150 years in the future in a post-apocalyptic world where a war has happened between mechs and humans, and, you know, AI has just gone out of control, and so, yeah, the world is destroyed. Only a few humans live, and they all kind of live in these, like, tribes, but also mechs are still left over from said war. So I suppose you can guess who the enemies are in this game. But the game follows these 2 lovely characters here. We got Monkey and Trip. They both meet after the ship that they were traveling on crashes, and Trip realizes, hey, this dude is, he's pretty strong. I think I could use this. So she finds a slaver's headband, pops it on his head, and then she's like,
Okay, you're mine, bitch.
So then Monkey is forced to escort Trip home. Yes, this whole game is one long escort mission, but don't panic. It's not like the terrible escort missions that you see. It's, this one's actually good. Trip's actually useful. It's a game filled with lots of action, lots of traversal, great characters, pretty fun combat, if not slightly generic. It's got all the makings to be a hugely successful game, right? Well, it wasn't, but it didn't deserve to not be. And I'll say why. Right off the bat, it's based off of the best-selling novel in Asia. So it has a strong foundation right there. It's got plenty of material to work with. Just from these pictures here behind me, you can see it has such a bright and vibrant and colourful art style, which was quite rare in a generation that pumped out more brown than me after my morning coffee. Bright greens, deep reds, and serene blues. I mean, just look at this scene here where you're floating around above the water. Look how amazing it looks. And this was on the PS3 and 360. And not only that, the cast that was chosen to play these characters. We have Lindsay Shaw as Tripitaka, or Trip as we all know her. Richard Ridings, who plays a character named Pigsy, and he comes in a lot later in the game. He's a brutish engineer with a creepy obsession for Trip. He was her father's friend, and then it's like, yeah, he's just like, oh,
I could do me with some of that Trip, you know. Oh, she's lovely, she is.
That sounds nothing like him. He's never said anything like that, but that's pretty much how he comes across. It's a bit creepy. And of course, we have the great Andy Serkis playing Monkey. Now, these were not just voiced, they were actually motion captured as well. But these amazingly talented actors bring so much to the characters. And Andy Serkis was involved pretty much from the start of this project. He'd previously worked with Ninja Theory on Heavenly Sword, so he kind of knew the guys, and honestly, it was great to have him on board. It's the performances that really shine through in this game. But about 6 months into the project, they brought on Alex Garland. Garland was the one that wrote the screenplay for Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later, and he also made his directorial debut with Ex Machina. So there's quite some strong talent there as well, and Garland wanted to get into the video game space for a while and thought this was the perfect opportunity and the best place to start. The way Alex Garland approached the cutscenes, he wanted to make the transition between cutscenes and gameplay as smooth as possible. It worked for the time, like the technology that was at their disposal at the time. It worked. It's not quite like what we're seeing on, say, modern consoles now. It's weird to say modern because the Xbox 360 is pretty much just turned retro. Feels so old. It was a bigger feat to pull off back then, but I definitely think that they achieved what they were going for with that. And with all this talent coming together, it brings up some really interesting game mechanics. Like that scene I showed you earlier to kind of show off the colours involved Monkey riding around on what's called a cloud. In Journey to the West, the Monkey King rides around on a Nimbus, which also Dragon Ball took inspiration from that as well. Yeah, Monkey rides around on this cloud, and these parts of the game are so fun. Just so fun to just whip around everywhere on the cloud, and you get like little boosts that you can blast off ramps and get onto other sections and find hidden bits. It's just such a fun romp with the cloud, you know? And when Pigsy comes into it, he has some interesting mechanics. Although you don't actually control Pigsy, but he has this arm which allows him to grapple onto ledges and pull himself up. But there's also sections where he throws bombs, but he has no way to detonate them. So he throws like these sticky bombs, and then Monkey needs to use his staff, which can blast things, and he blasts the bombs. It opens up the pathway to move forward, or it's good for using on puzzles. There's lots of different applications for it, and I think they apply them quite well. Like most of the stuff that they've implemented in this game, amazing ideas, such great ideas. They're just a little underused. And I mentioned that this whole game is pretty much an escort mission. That is very true, it's an escort mission. You just basically, the headband means if Trip was to die, Monkey dies. So they need to stick together. Trip's not entirely useless. She knows her way around technology, hence how she was able to put the headband onto Monkey. So she's got things like this little dragonfly, which can sense bombs and the radius of mechs where they can see you. She also uses her knowledge to override some technology so you can progress forward. And she's got a couple of moves, one of which being a decoy. So if you're all being shot at but you need to move to the next part of cover, she can project some sort of decoy that all the mechs will then start firing at, allowing you to progress forward to then open the way. Of course, there's sections where you have to carry her on your back, and then other times where she can't quite jump as far as Monkey because, you know, he's super athletic and, well, like a monkey. And so he has to throw her across bigger gaps that she can't jump across. It's really interesting, really fun gameplay, and just not grating or annoying like most escort missions when the other person walks really slowly, or it's as though they've got provoke on the entire time and just everyone's just like, oh, attack that one, attack that one. You don't get that here. It's great. It's a great game. Enslaved Odyssey to the West had such great talent behind it. Not just the writers and cast, but the devs as well. Especially when you think the fact that Team Ninja then went on to make Hellblade, and all the points I've mentioned makes up the formula for a massively successful game. But it just did not happen. Some games even have less than that and sell more. Some technical bugs and a basic level of traversal and combat were the main critiques of this game, as it scored 8 out of 10s pretty much across the board. There was nothing particularly game breaking here, but just a lot of the interesting systems were underused. The game released in October 2010. By February 2010 it had only sold 460,000 copies, and 730,000 by September of that same year. A sequel for the game was cancelled because of Namco Bandai's failed expectations of reaching 1 million sales. I believe there was a problem with marketing because I didn't actually hear about this game until a couple years after it had released, but they put it down to being in a crowded release window. All I know for certain is that Enslaved Odyssey to the West is a great game and did not deserve to fail. Have you played Enslaved Odyssey to the West? You really should. Is it a game that you'd consider picking up and playing now? Let's discuss it down in the comments. Enslave the like button with a mechanical headband, and subscribe for discussions on all things gaming past, present and future. If you like games based on mythology, then click the card in a second to see my video on how Age of Mythology deserves a remaster, and I'll see you over there. Bye bye.